A family living in the shadow of Buckingham Palace, sleeping on damp concrete, shivering through a winter night. Across the Atlantic, a university professor with a Ph.D. wanders the streets of Los Angeles, searching for a meal. And in Paris, the city of light, tents stretch along the banks of the Seine, surrounded by garbage. This isn't fiction, it's reality. Homelessness is exploding across the world's wealthiest nations, from the United States to France, from the UK to South Korea. How did it come to this? Why are millions losing the roofs over their heads in countries with billion-dollar economies? Don't take your eyes off the screen. The answer is coming right up. What if I told you that one of the world's wealthiest nations has the highest rate of homelessness globally? In 2023, homelessness in the UK reached unprecedented levels. Over 10,510 people were recorded as homeless, an all-time high. But the reality is even bleaker. More than 1 in every 200 households now lives in unstable conditions, including shelters, temporary accommodations, or even on the streets. London, the UK's capital and a global symbol of affluence, is at the epicenter of this crisis. For every 58 residents in London, 1 person is homeless. It's a statistic that lays bare the harsh disparity between wealth and poverty. Housing affordability is one of the biggest drivers of homelessness in the UK. Rent prices in London and other major cities have soared beyond reach for many. Imagine being a cafe worker earning £1,200 a month, while rent for a modest flat in London averages £22,000 a year. That math doesn't add up, does it? Cuts to housing benefits and reduced social support have worsened the problem. For many low-income families, these benefits were a lifeline. Without them, eviction becomes a grim reality. The policies meant to protect the vulnerable are failing them. For those who lose their homes, life doesn't just become uncomfortable, it becomes dangerous. Many are forced into damp, filthy temporary accommodations where overcrowding and lack of sanitation pose serious health risks. Nearly 1/3 of homeless individuals in the UK due to a lack of medical treatment. In the face of this crisis, some organisations are shining a light on the issue in creative ways. The Homelessness Reframed exhibition at the Saatchi Art Gallery showcases artwork created by or inspired by homeless individuals. Meanwhile, Matt and Jess Turtle have founded the world's first museum dedicated to homelessness, a space to tell the stories that often go unheard. If the UK contain its homelessness crisis, what about the world's superpower? Before discussing the next issue, don't forget to take 5 seconds to subscribe and turn on notifications. We've got plenty of interesting content coming your way. Now, let's turn our attention to the United States. The United States is the wealthiest nation on Earth, yet over 500,000 Americans sleep without a roof every night. How does this happen in a country that spends trillions on innovation and defense? The answers may shock you. In 2024, the US, the Department of Housing and Urban Development reported that approximately 582,462 people experienced homelessness on a single night. Of these, 77,140 are chronically homeless, meaning they've been without stable shelter for a year or more. In cities like Los Angeles, New York, and San Francisco, the crisis is in plain sight. Entire blocks are lined with makeshift shelters. Tent cities sprawl under freeways and in public parks, transforming urban landscapes in ways that are hard to ignore. Housing in America is expensive, sometimes unimaginably so. The national median rent reached $2,053 per month in 2024, far outpacing wage growth. In places like San Francisco, average monthly rent for a 1-bedroom apartment exceeds $3,000. Many Americans simply can't keep up. Homelessness isn't just an economic issue, it's also deeply tied to mental health and addiction. A 2024 report by the National Alliance to End Homelessness revealed that 25% of unsheltered individuals have a severe mental illness and 38% struggle with substance use disorders. Without affordable health care, these problems become nearly impossible to address. For many, living on the streets is dangerous. Some find shelter in abandoned buildings or vehicles, while others turn to highway underpasses and tunnels. In Los Angeles alone, over 1,500 people live in the city's sewer system. In the face of this crisis, some individuals and groups have forged unconventional solutions. Take Slab City, also known as Freedom Town, a remote desert community where the homeless, veterans, and others live without electricity or water, but find a sense of freedom and solidarity. Then there's Dr. Daniel McCune, a former astronomy lecturer at UCLA. Earning $70,000 a year, Daniel still couldn't afford to live in Los Angeles due to skyrocketing rent prices. "I was forced to live out of my car for months," he recalls. "It's ironic. I spent years studying the stars but ended up sleeping under them." His story is a sobering reminder of how close many professionals are to homelessness. Dear friends, by watching this far, many of you might feel that having enough food and water, or simply a place to call home, is already a blessing. If you feel the same, leave a agree in the comments below. From a superpower to a land of stark contrasts, let's now explore how even a city as beautiful as Paris hides a darker reality. Stay with us. Approximately 333,000 individuals in France are homeless, and the capital city isn't spared. In Paris alone, 16.1% of residents, about 463,000 people, live below the poverty line, struggling to survive on an average monthly income of just €747, or around $800. This isn't just a statistic, it's a human story, and the numbers keep climbing. What's causing this hidden struggle? Economic inequality plays a central role. While tourists marvel at the luxury boutiques of the Champs-Élysées, many Parisians struggle to make ends meet. Rising living costs and stagnant wages push families to the brink, leaving them vulnerable to homelessness. Housing instability is another significant factor. Losing one's home is shockingly common in France. A unique issue here is squatting, where vacant homes are illegally occupied by those without shelter. Disturbingly, French law often protects squatters more than homeowners, leaving the displaced struggling for solutions. For those without homes, life is unimaginably harsh. Many sleep under overpasses, on cardboard mats, or along the banks of the St. Martin Canal, surrounded by heaps of garbage. Others seek refuge in subway stations, crowded together for warmth during the bitter winter months. Amid this crisis, non-profit organizations are stepping up. Mobile shower units and laundry services bring dignity to those living on the streets. Charities provide free meals, haircuts, and medical care, while volunteers distribute blankets and supplies. It's a lifeline for many, but is it enough? Now it's your turn to weigh in. Have you witnessed similar struggles in your city or country? Share your thoughts in the comments below. But France isn't alone. Let's journey to Asia next, where a rising economic powerhouse grapples with its own hidden homelessness problem. China's homelessness crisis may not grab as many headlines as other nations, but the numbers are staggering. Approximately 2.5 million people across the country are homeless. Real estate prices in cities like Hong Kong are among the highest in the world. The cost of buying a small apartment can exceed $1.2 million. Even renting a basic space is out of reach for many. In Hong Kong, homelessness takes unique forms. One of the most striking is the rise of MEMC refugees. Nearly 25% of the city's homeless population spends their nights inside McDonald's fast food chains, drawn by air conditioning, security, and a sense of normalcy. Then there are coffin homes, tiny apartments no larger than a parking space. These super small units, often poorly ventilated and overcrowded, are rented for as much as $500 a month. For many, it's a desperate compromise between the streets and something resembling shelter. Homeless individuals in China have also adopted creative strategies to survive. Some have turned to live streaming under bridges, performing songs or sharing their struggles to earn small donations from viewers. Others use unique begging methods, holding signs asking for funds not just for food, but for unexpected desires, like travel. Let's meet Mr. Nguyen Van Sun. Once a construction worker in Hong Kong, Sun lost his job due to an injury. Unable to pay rent, he ended up living under a pedestrian bridge in Sham Shui Pio. "The city has grown richer," he says, "but people like me are forgotten." Then there's Tao Duong, a once brilliant academic who graduated from a prestigious university and earned a Ph.D. Despite his credentials, he spent the last 14 years homeless. Struggling with mental health issues and unable to reconnect with family, he scavenges for food and sleeps under a bridge. Success felt so close, he recalls, but everything slipped away. Finally, there's Mrs. Ivy, an elderly woman who refuses to live in a coffin home. "I'd rather sleep in the park than feel like I'm locked in a box," she says. Every night, she carefully guards her few belongings, keeping her phone and wallet close. For Ivy, the streets offer more freedom than cramped, unsafe housing. South Korea, a nation known for its cutting-edge technology, K-pop, and rapid economic development. But behind this image of success lies a surprising struggle. With approximately 11,000 homeless individuals in a population of 51.7 million, how does a wealthy, modern society leave so many behind? For a nation celebrated for its progress, the existence of thousands of homeless individuals reveals the cracks in its urban and social systems. One of the biggest challenges is the soaring cost of housing. Real estate prices in South Korea, particularly in Seoul, have skyrocketed, leaving affordable housing out of reach for many. The average apartment in Seoul costs over $1 million, making homeownership unattainable for low-income earners. Alcohol abuse is another contributing factor. South Korea has one of the highest rates of alcohol consumption in the world. Many homeless individuals spend much of their limited income on alcohol, further entrenching their cycle of poverty. South Korea's winters are brutal. Temperatures regularly drop below freezing, and the cold, combined with the freezing ground, makes sleeping outside life-threatening. While some seek warmth from underground heating systems near subway stations, many cannot escape the bitter conditions. Just 20 minutes from Gangnam, one of Seoul's wealthiest districts, lies Gyeonggi slum. Here, makeshift homes constructed from scrap materials barely stand against the elements. In winter, coal fires meant for warmth often lead to devastating house fires. In a desperate bid for stability, some women, particularly Vietnamese immigrants, enter into sham marriages. Brokers promise a way out of homelessness in exchange for money or favors, but these arrangements often lead to exploitation and more hardship. Despite these challenges, organizations like Dream City Center and Myeongdong Church are stepping in. Dream City Center offers housing, medical checkups, laundry services, and even haircuts to hundreds every day. Meanwhile, Myeongdong Church serves over 800 free meals weekly, providing vital support to the homeless and elderly. Hyun's story is one of quiet resilience. After enduring bullying in a homeless women's shelter, she sought refuge under Jonggang Bridge. For 5 years, she lived in a tent, surviving on small donations from strangers. "I never imagined my life would turn out this way," she says, "but at least here I have some control." What would you do if the very roof over your head became unaffordable? Homelessness in Canada affects approximately 235,000 people every year, with over 35,000 individuals homeless on any given night. While cities like Toronto and Vancouver thrive as economic hubs, they also bear the brunt of this crisis. In Toronto alone, over 10,000 people access emergency shelters each year, with many more left unsheltered. Canada's real estate market is one of the least affordable in the world. Cities like Vancouver and Toronto have seen property prices soar by over 300% in the last 20 years. Renting isn't much easier, with the average rent for a one-bedroom apartment in Toronto exceeding $2,500 per month in 2024. For minimum wage workers, these costs are insurmountable. Despite the growing need, Canada's public housing stock has failed to keep pace. Since the 1990s, government investment in social housing has declined, leaving low-income families on years-long waiting lists. This shortage forces many into unsafe or temporary living situations. Canada's harsh winters amplify the struggles of homelessness. Temperatures often plunge below -20 degrees Celsius, making sleeping outside life-threatening. Emergency shelters fill quickly, leaving many with no option but to brave the cold. In response, both government and non-profit organizations are stepping in. The federal government's National Housing Strategy aims to build 100,000 affordable housing units by 2030. Meanwhile, NGOs like Raising the Roof provide emergency shelters, transitional housing, and job training to help individuals regain independence. While these efforts are crucial, critics argue they fall short of addressing the systemic issues driving homelessness in Canada. "In the winter, you can't just survive, you have to fight to stay alive," says David, a former construction worker who has lived in a Toronto shelter for 3 years. "You can't sleep because you're too cold, and you can't leave because you have nowhere to go." Canada's homelessness crisis reveals the stark impact of housing inequality and systemic barriers. But what about the challenges faced in other parts of the world? From the cold streets of Canada, let's venture into the Southern Hemisphere to understand how Australia's unique challenges shape its homelessness crisis. Homelessness in Australia is at an alarming scale. According to the latest reports, over 116,000 people are without stable housing each night. This includes families living in cars, individuals in overcrowded shelters, and entire communities struggling in urban tent cities. Indigenous Australians are disproportionately affected, making up nearly 20% of the homeless population, despite representing only 3.2% of the overall population. This stark disparity raises urgent questions about systemic inequalities. Australia's real estate market is one of the most expensive globally. In cities like Sydney and Melbourne, median house prices exceed $1 million, and rental costs are skyrocketing. For low-income families and individuals, affording even a modest apartment has become nearly impossible. Government investment in public housing has stagnated for decades. With a shortfall of 400,000 affordable units, waiting lists for social housing can span years. This chronic underinvestment has left vulnerable populations with nowhere to turn. Indigenous Australians face a unique and devastating set of challenges. Generations of systemic inequalities in education, employment, and healthcare have contributed to higher rates of homelessness. For many, finding stable housing is an uphill battle, compounded by racial discrimination and inadequate support services. In cities like Sydney and Melbourne, homelessness is increasingly visible. Tent cities have become a grim feature of urban landscapes, while overcrowded shelters struggle to meet demand. For many, the streets are the only option. Main efforts to address homelessness in Australia include both government initiatives and NGO programs. The National Housing and Homelessness Agreement allocates $1.6 billion annually to provide emergency shelters and build affordable housing. Non-profits like Mission Australia and the Salvation Army run shelters, offer counselling and provide employment services to help individuals rebuild their lives. While these efforts are commendable, experts argue that a more significant investment in long-term housing solutions is essential to end the cycle of homelessness. Leaving Australia, but what about its neighbour, New Zealand, where high per capita homelessness tells a unique story? Keep watching. In New Zealand, approximately 1% of the population, nearly 50,000 people, live in conditions of severe housing deprivation. This includes not only rough sleepers but also families living in overcrowded homes, garages, and temporary shelters. For a country with just 5 million residents, this is a staggering statistic. The surge in house prices over the last 2 decades has left many New Zealanders behind. As of 2024, the median house price in Auckland sits at over $1 million, while wage growth has lagged far behind. For low-income earners, home ownership is now an impossible dream. While urban homelessness is visible in cities like Auckland and Wellington, rural areas face their own challenges. Hidden homelessness, where families live in garages, overcrowded homes, or uninsulated sheds, remains a widespread but underreported issue. In New Zealand's cities, homelessness is becoming increasingly visible. Tent setups and makeshift shelters have sprung up in parks and along busy streets, highlighting the urgent need for action. To tackle this crisis, the New Zealand government has launched initiatives like Kanga Ora, which aims to build tens of thousands of public housing units over the next decade. Emergency shelters and transitional housing are also being expanded, but critics argue that these measures aren't keeping up with demand. "We've been on the waiting list for 3 years," says Sarah, a mother of 2 living in a friend's garage. "It's hard to stay hopeful when you don't even have a place to call home. I see people walking by, looking at us like we're invisible," says Michael, who has been sleeping in a tent in Auckland for over a year. "It's like we don't exist." Sarah's journey into hidden homelessness began after her landlord sold the property she was renting. Unable to find another affordable place, she and her 2 children moved into a friend's garage. "It's cramped and there's no heating," she says. "But it's better than being out in the cold." Michael, a former construction worker, became homeless after a work injury left him unable to pay his rent. He now lives in a tent in a public park, relying on food donations and public showers. "I want to work again," he says, "but without an address, it's impossible to get hired." Exploring the Pacific at the journey's end? Let's turn to Germany, a nation with a strong social safety net, yet still grappling with rising homelessness. As of 2024, approximately 650,000 people in Germany are experiencing homelessness, ranging from rough sleepers to those living in temporary accommodations. Germany's housing crisis is most visible in its urban centers, where rent hikes and housing shortages have reached unprecedented levels. Germany's housing market is under immense pressure, particularly in cities like Berlin, Munich, and Hamburg. Sharp rent increases, some as high as 40% in the last decade, have outpaced wage growth, forcing many to choose between food, utilities, and housing. The influx of refugees and migrants has further strained the housing market. While Germany's open-door policy has been widely praised for its humanitarian values, it has also led to overcrowded shelters and increased competition for affordable housing. Germany's federal system means that homelessness policies vary significantly across its 16 states. This inconsistency leaves some areas with well-funded support systems and others struggling to meet basic needs, creating disparities in care. In response to the housing crisis, the German government has pledged to build 400,000 new housing units annually, with a significant portion earmarked as affordable housing. While this initiative shows promise, critics argue that progress is too slow to meet the growing demand. "I worked my entire life," says Klaus, a 65-year-old retired factory worker. "But after my rent was raised, my pension wasn't enough to cover it. Now I'm here, in a shelter, trying to figure out what went wrong." Klaus spent over 40 years working in a factory outside Berlin. When he retired, he assumed his pension would cover his modest lifestyle. But a sudden rent increase left him unable to afford his apartment. "I never imagined I'd be homeless," he says. "Now, I'm just trying to get through each day." "We came here hoping for a better life," shares Amina, a refugee mother of 3 living in temporary housing. But the wait for permanent housing feels endless. Germany's homelessness crisis highlights the challenges even wealthy nations face in balancing economic growth with social responsibility. Having traversed continents, we've seen how homelessness affects every corner of our world. Now, let's reflect on what we've learned and consider the way forward. If you enjoyed today's video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Your support means a lot to us. Click on the video that appears on your screen right now. I'm sure you'll love this content. Comment below about the next country you want to see featured on our channel. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next video. Thanks for being with us on this great journey. Leave your thoughts in the comments and like to help us. Remember to subscribe for more. See you soon.